In the last video, I started talking to you about the demographics and the interests of your target customer. In this lesson, I'm going to explain how you can use this information within the Facebook Power Editor to really begin to narrow down your audience for your ad campaign. I'm also going to explain how to carry out even more in-depth research into your customer, because the more you research, the better your campaign is going to perform. So I just wanted to show you a couple of screenshots from the Power Editor again, so that we can cover these off in a bit more detail. So there's three areas I want you to take notice of here, and the first is the target information on your demographics. So in the previous section, I asked you to get to know your customer intimately. Their age, education level, where they live. Well, this is where you're going to set that information in the Power Editor. And this is why it's so important for you to be able to understand as much about your customer as possible. Now here's a really good tip for you. If there's a characteristic of your customer that you aren't really sure about, for example, you know your product is really well targeted at people aged over 50 and over, but you aren't quite sure about aged 40 to 50, just create two separate ads, one for each age range, and test the results. We'll talk more about testing later on in the training and how you compare the results of these types of experiments. The next screenshot shows the most important area in the Power Editor, and that's the interest section. So you should recall in the previous lesson I spoke about discovering what types of things your target customer is interested in. I mentioned blogs, websites, celebrities, brands. Here's where you'll find the Facebook pages for those things, and this is where Facebook advertising really comes into its own, because it's a fantastic way to narrow down your audience to a very select group who've already shown an interest in something that's relevant to you. And here's a really important point to note, and this is something you should write down. For each ad you create, you should target that ad at just one individual interest. So if you've narrowed down your customer to liking 10 interests, then create 10 different ads and compare them. Why do I recommend this? Because your cost per conversion, which is going to be your big way of measuring the success of your ad, is likely to vary significantly for different interests. So by splitting out the interests into different ads, you can compare costs, you can ditch expensive ads and keep going with the ads that you're achieving a really low cost of conversion with. Again, this is all about thorough testing, so I'll go through that in more detail in the testing section, but for now it's just important to note that you must stick to just one interest per ad. And finally, I want to show you this little graphic where Facebook shows you the reach of your ad, and this will tell you how many people you're potentially going to reach with your ad based on how you've narrowed down your options. You want to avoid a really big number in the hundreds of thousands or in the millions, although a number in the low hundreds of thousands probably should be okay. I personally prefer to target an audience of around 10,000 to 100,000 for each of my ads. When you target an audience lower than 10,000, you don't have an awful amount of people who'll get to see those impressions of your ads and be able to test whether or not it's going to be successful. So when you're having a look at targeted interest, pay close attention to their reach and have a look at this figure on the right hand side here.